In your experience, I mean, when you were in high school, mind you, who were your go-to coaches for your monologue?
Go-to coaches were, I had a person who was not my main drama teacher, but he was a drama teacher. And eventually, after I left, he became the drama teacher. So he was someone who was always kind of around and supporting, and like not really a teacher's assistant, but he was somehow always around. And so he was the obvious go-to choice. He was younger, he was an actor, and we really respected him. So he was our go-to.
Awesome. Once you found your monologues and you got your coaching, how did you implement that coaching?
Well, I think it's pretty straightforward when you have a session. You bring your monologues to this coach. For the first 5 minutes, you get your coaching, and then, they give you feedback. So I would really just write down the notes that he would give me. And then we'd run it again with some adjustments, maybe take a few more notes, and that session would last an hour. And I would be like, okay, I've got stuff to work on, and I would go away for a week, and I would probably work on those notes and make sure that I came back like saying, hey, here's what I got, what's next? I'm always looking for notes to apply.
So when you say you would come back, does that mean you would, does that imply multiple sessions with the same person?
Yes.
That's awesome. So you felt like, did you expand into, did you have friends look at your monologues? Did you only have teachers? I mean, what was who did you show your monologues to, and which opinions, how did you differentiate between their opinions on those monologues?
Well, I definitely showed my monologues to my peers. In my case, I had like 4 others, who were auditioning for top drama schools. So I definitely showed my monologues to them. They showed their monologues to me. And I never did show it to my drama teacher. Like I said, I showed it to this other guy who was kind of always around. He was like a teacher. I even got outside coaching from like guest teachers, people who lived in New York, who were friends of my drama teacher, and maybe came down at some point during my sophomore year, and we knew each other, because he or she coached on a production. So they knew that we were getting ready to prepare for audition monologues, and so we brought them down. So I got a lot of opinions, and I was smart enough to understand that, you take what serves you and you leave what doesn't. So I took everything that was said to me with a grain of salt. Ultimately, I know that I'm auditioning not for them, I'm auditioning for me. And I want these to be like a representation of me. And so I didn't want to take any notes or apply any notes that were like, I don't really understand that. So like if I didn't really vibe with it, or if I didn't get it, I would let them give me the note, of course, but you kind of leave that to the side. But other notes that were just like, oh, thank you, that's perfect, that's exactly what I want to tell with this story. That's the story I want to tell. I would totally incorporate those and own them as my own.
That's awesome. I wonder what is the quintessential purpose of getting coaching before you go, if it is truly about how you feel on the inside?
Right. Like, why don't you just ask yourself, what do I want to do, and do it?
Yeah.
Well, anybody who has had acting experience and a director who has been really great understands that the director, or in this case the coach, can really elicit more of what you want from you because of their outside eye. They have an outside eye, and when we work, we're working from our perspective, but we're not seeing what it's literally like, and we shouldn't be. If you're seeing yourself from the outside. You're not in your work. So you get this outside perspective, and they go, oh, I can see that what you're feeling on the inside or what story you're going through, that's translating. It's really translating well right here. But I see that what you're going for in this moment, it's not quite translating. It may be internally working, but it's not making it to the audience. So here's what I suggest, right? And then they give you something that helps you just tweak the internal so that you know it's being delivered, not just felt.
That's great. How many of your monologues that you showed your coaches in sets got changed? How many monologues did you move around saying, oh, well, this one actually, from an outside perspective, this one actually fits better with this one, or I see that you did these two together, oh, but this one actually might work better?
How
much
I remember.
information did you get from them?
I don't recall getting feedback from coaches on like pairings. I'm sure that they probably said, oh, that's a great monologue. That would go well with the other one that I coached you on. You know, probably they did, but I pretty much knew that I was going to work all my monologues as if I was going to do any one of them for every school. So that when it does come game time, well, I think these two monologues would go well together, you know, and it's my choice. I don't remember pre-choosing, and I know that what I actually did for schools, you know, was very different. You know, for North Carolina School of the Arts, I remember doing a monologue from Grapes of Wrath and Much Ado About Nothing. I never did those two at any other school. I got into that school, and same with Juilliard. I didn't do those two for any other school. So I did two dramatic monologues, Italian-American Reconciliation and Richard II. And so I knew it was going to be up to me to choose which ones, and I don't really remember letting any feedback, if any, really determine that. You know, I think going back again, it is about what you want to give. You know, this audition is a representation of you, and any feedback or coaching you get just should serve to help you tell the story of you. It's a lot of yous.
Yeah. That's awesome. I know for me, coaching was a big part of my experience as a high schooler, and a big part of my life as a human being. How much coaching did you do for others? Like you said, you had a group of people that you were working with. How much, trust and reliance did you have in the community that you built?
That was a huge part for me. I was like inseparable from those four others. We actually had somebody who was a senior when we were freshmen who we looked up to. He went off to SUNY Purchase and to study acting, and when he had summer breaks or winter breaks, right, he would come and coach us. And so, we always looked up to him, and he was part of that group too. So him and my four graduating folks, we were like inseparable. They knew my monologues, I knew their monologues. I don't remember ever really getting coaching from them or even giving them coaching, because we didn't really see each other as that in our lives. But what we did do was always, I remember acknowledging each other all the time. Like, that monologue is great. That's got to be the best moment I've seen you do. So acknowledging each other was really what I remember from those groups. They really supported me. We were happy for each other anytime any of us succeeded, and we all got into great schools. We all got into the top schools. So we were happy for each other. Funny enough, we didn't go to the same school. Yeah. We got into 5 different top drama schools.
Yeah. And I know that in my time with students, not only in high school but in college as well, they talk so much, and even into the industry, they talk so much. It's such a competitive thing. People, actively trying to, lead you astray. And I just want to get your thoughts on positivity inside your community and tactics young actors can take to build that community for themselves.
Absolutely. I think that at the younger ages, if you're still in high school, I know many people who audition for top schools are not in high school, but if you're still in high school or if you're, young, it's not really an issue. I haven't really heard in all the students I've spoken with that, they're questioning the intentions of their immediate community. But I can understand how, in college or in the industry, you might have some people who snuggle up close to you for malintent. And I think there's really two things that come to mind as far as how to foster a really valuable community for yourself. One is, use your inner knowing. You really got to sense, and you should trust that sense that someone's good for you or, isn't really valuable for, your career or whatever. So as far as career relationships and professional community, you should be able to sense if someone's doing you well or if they're not really adding value. And that leads into my second way, which is add value to others in order to build community. When people see you as someone who's like good to be around, not because of your vibes, but because you make their acting better or you make their career better, like you're actually adding value to their craft, just by being around them. For me, one thing I remember doing even in college, but definitely in high school, was I created like a book club. I did a book reading club where we would get together, and you're invited if you can make it. If you can't, okay, but let's read An Actor Prepares. I'll read out loud one paragraph, I'll pass the book, and we'll get in a circle and we'll read 3 chapters of An Actor Prepares, or building a character, creating a role, anything, Stanislavski, any of these. And then I did that in college too, where I invited people to a play reading. You want to get to know plays, you want to get to know authors, you want to read and practice your acting and make moments with other actors, cool. Come to this play reading if you're free. And so, yeah, I still do that. Adding value. How can I add value?
That's incredible. I think that's something that we should all take note from, not only in our acting career, but in our lives, and how we can add value to other people, and inherently, how do we take that value and add it to ourselves? How often, I know, people will sing praises. Sometimes I know I had moments where I really wanted criticism. I really wanted to hear notes. I really wanted to hear critique. And I found in those moments that when and especially in those moments, I would just get, oh, that's cool. That's good. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
How do you deal with weak notes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's 2 things that come to mind. If you're getting notes that you feel are not challenging you or really making your piece better, or you feel like not much to chew on there. One is new people. It's never a problem to get a new coach, a new perspective. And, I've done that before where I'm like, hey, who coaches you? I'd go to friends and say, who coaches you? Or, if one of my friends was raving about a coach, I'd be like, would they be willing to take a look at my stuff? The other thing that comes to mind is ask your coach questions. So, and this will happen for the rest of your life. When something you're there to get is not being delivered, you got to start to view it as your responsibility to pull it out of the person. Because why? You're spending your time to get the value you need, and that's not necessarily always going to be there. You need to, if you want to ensure that you get the value, at least come prepared with questions in case the coach is not really giving stuff. So if I'm in there and I fully trust that the coach is going to give me some valuable stuff, and then for some reason he or she doesn't quite, well, I may just go, I'm not feeling it. I have a couple of questions. And you go, hey, did you feel like you were connected emotionally to me that entire monologue? Right? Then they're going to be forced to answer your question. And of course, that's just feedback right there. Mm-hmm. Or, hey, did you feel like it started strong Or did you feel like you weren't really roped in until 10 seconds? Right? Quality questions you can come with, and you don't need to ask them right off the bat, but if you get feedback that's not great, you should have some questions that you're really interested in. And I think that how to get into drama school and the resources we provide, you can really learn what questions are right to ask in order to improve your work.
Yeah, that's really fantastic. That's actually remnant of what a coach told me before I went and worked with other people. She always said, you know yourself better than anybody who will ever watch you perform. You know your habituals. You know the little things that get in your way. So have those questions ready to when after you perform and they give you some notes, you can say, hey, were my happy feet a little active?
Mm-hmm. Your own deal.
Exactly.
One thing I was made fun of was, in high school at least, I would always open my arms. I would open my arms really big, like if I had a line like, what do you mean? Or, hey, like something, I would open my arms like a winged angel or something. And I was made fun of by my peers in a very loving way, but that group was like, you gonna open your arms in this one?
Hey.
And that was nice, because when you become aware of things, feedback will make you aware. And if you can become aware, that's powerful, because then once you are aware of something, then you're at choice of whether or not you want to do that, or whether or not you're like, no, that's not necessary for this piece,
Yeah, the difference between a choice and or a specific gesture, or something that is
a habit.
A habit not thought of.
Right.
That's great. That's really wonderful. Kind of piggybacking off of that, and finding specificity. What were some exercises that you did or that you liked that really tuned you into your body or your voice or your speech, so that some of those habits weren't a problem, or they were contained?
Interesting. One thing that I love working with coaches on is personalization. I had a moment in a monologue where I was overwhelmed with excitement at seeing a celebrity. And as simple as it sounds, even in my 4 years of high school training, I didn't actually even think of a real celebrity that Anthony, would be overwhelmed with excitement about. I was just pretending to be overwhelmed by excitement. And of course, I was a good performer enough to sort of be good. But when this coach said, well, who's your celebrity? Who are you going to personalize this with? You got to see the person you're going to get. And I remember at that time, it was Kevin Kline. And that just immediately made me feel something. Any gestures that I had already kind of been doing, I remember them fading away and just being raw excitement. And it totally fed the energy of the monologue. It totally led me into the next line, into the next line, into the next line. And it was a really built a nice monologue. It flowed, and the momentum was awesome because of that connection. So I really think that to rid yourself of habits that you're, relying on for being a good performer, I do this because it makes me look like a good performer. We all have that as high schoolers and stuff. To rid yourself of that, I would personally recommend personalization. How does this situation relate to something in your life? And if you can start to feel things, because you're connecting them to people or situations in your own life, it's going to be more raw. It's going to be better quality.
Yeah, and when you talk about personalization and you talk about choices, when you're getting coaching and you've memorized this monologue, you have put in work, you're making choices, but when you get into coaching, maybe these choices, the coach wants to transform a choice or,
do their way.
Yeah, not so much do it their way, but maybe has a suggestion. And I find that for young actors, it's very hard. They get into a rhythm where the monologue feels memorized, right? what did your coaches tell you? How did you, because I know even in the room when you're auditioning and they say make a change, right? They might change a circumstance, they might change something. How do you
keep it flexible?
Yes, but still have it rock solid?
Yeah. There's two things that come to mind. One, in order to have, you need to have the words rock solid. You don't need to have a performance rock solid. So to have the words rock solid, you need to be able to do speed run-throughs. Speed run-throughs is something I learned in freshman year of high school, and it has served me high school, college, professional, everything. I do speed run-throughs if I have like a chunk of text or whatever. Speed run-throughs is basically saying the monologue literally as fast as humanly possible without missing a consonant. So you may do a 2-minute monologue in like 30 seconds or less. So you could probably say the ABCs in like 3 seconds if you said the ABCs as fast as possible. That's a speed run-through. You should be able to do a speed run-through with no pauses, and that's how you know your words are memorized and those are down. Now, to keep your performance flexible, you need to do random exercises. Like, there's things like overdramatic exercise, if you've heard of like a melodramatic exercise. If you've heard of doing it the opposite, sometimes to illuminate like Chekhov, I was always taught like just play the complete opposite. If he's loving her, say the words as if he's hating her. If he is overwhelmed with excitement at seeing the celebrity, just play it using the same words, but being overwhelmed with anger at seeing the celebrity. Like, play the opposite. Use the words in all different fashions. Physically go over the top, physically stay perfectly still, physically lie down and put your head in a pillow. I mean, just do anything that is going to keep the monologue fresh physically. But the words need to be down. And to do that, that's speed run through. So I think that's super important in college audition monologues because, I got a total change when they adjusted my monologue at multiple schools, but one in particular, they're giving me an adjustment of a location and a situation. So now I'm seeing new images, I'm feeling new things because of these images, and yet the words are there because I'm not thinking about what's my line? Like, I've got it down.
Yeah, and that's great. We're gonna wrap up. This is gonna be my last question. When it comes to memorizing words, I know a lot of actors, young actors especially, they memorize gestures with words.
Yeah, totally.
They gesture on a word. They feel like they need to move on this or move on that.
Right.
And what would be your words of wisdom for them to separate, separating the words, as you said, to really get those rock solid and to free themselves physically to be more in the moment or make more impulse decisions that feel good in the moment versus this felt good yesterday, so I'm gonna do it today?
Yeah, I think that I did that too. As I was training, it's like you want to put a physical gesture on a word for emphasis because you think that it tells the story, and that's basically it's okay. Schools understand that happens, but what it really is an indication of is a amateur storyteller and someone who is kind of watching themselves and putting their own idea on top of a monologue, rather than what you want to be doing in the audition room, which is going through the experience of what the character is going through. And that can look different each time you do it. It really shouldn't look too different when you go to college audition monologues because it's really just a monologue and, it should be polished. But you should not feel like you have to do a gesture on a specific line. And the way to separate that sort of habit that you can get into is using some of these tools that I've mentioned. Like, you should be able to do this monologue standing still or sitting in Indian style and just speed through the monologue. Do a speed run through of the monologue, just words. Nothing is moving except your mouth, and it's moving at 1,000,000 miles a minute. You should be able to knock that out. Then you should be able to do the whole monologue with your arms completely above your head and outstretched, like without letting the gestures that kind of get you, those should not happen. And you can kind of test yourself. Heck, we're all creative. You're creative. You can make up your own exercise. What if you put, your hands behind your back and held a pencil between them and did your monologue like that? Can you not gesture, or whatever? Some people I remember lift their eyebrows
That's me.
Yeah, some people lift their eyebrows when they act and all that stuff. And I remember one time this guest coach, she's amazing. She went to SUNY Purchase and she's awesome. She put a piece of tape on the forehead. And so that every time the eyebrows were raised, you'd really feel it. And you're like, wow, I raised my eyebrows like 100 times in this monologue. And you don't realize that because you're not watching yourself from the outside. So do anything that breaks those habits physically. But yeah, I think speed run-throughs are important for words and keeping it alive with different physical exercises so that you're confident you can do this in any room, in any piece of clothing, it's flexible for when you go to your audition.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I'm sure that there are many more thoughts on coaching, but we'll get to those later.
Cool.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.